this is going to be part 9 and the final part for pushing back on the concept of false memories. And this part is specifically on how to cope if others are not believing you, accusing you of having false memories, etc. Also, this will be the last part that I am reading from the entire book of The Courage to Heal. I have completed this book now, but if you are a CSA survivor on a healing journey, stick around, follow me, because we will be moving on to Healing Sex, which is supposed to be a really good book for coping with the difficulties and symptoms of CSA that can come up in your consensual, chosen, intimate relationships in adulthood. Okay, but so personal strategies for dealing with backlash related to false memories. I'm mostly just going to read the subheadings because I think a lot of these are pretty self-explanatory, but there are a few where I do want to read the actual contents themselves. Okay, so get support in dealing with your feelings. Obviously, a key part of that is going to be finding a therapist that you really click with and really trust and that is well educated in CSA. Protect yourself. Be cautious about what news-related content you consume related to CSA or SA in the news. This was kind of suggesting specifically for false memories. I don't really see that in the news that much, but I know that I find myself sometimes really drawn to any major stories that involve SA, and I know that consuming too much of that can definitely take too much of a toll on my mental health. Keep telling your story to those that you love and that you trust. Don't let yourself be silenced. Your experience is valid and it deserves to be shared with those who can listen with respect and compassion. If you are doubting yourself, when you've been told for your whole life that you're crazy, bad, and wrong, and then your daily newspaper questions your very capacity to remember and name what happened to you, it may become exceedingly difficult to hold the validity of your experience or even to believe in your right to search for the truth of your past. Yet, this is the most crucial right for survivors, for all people, the freedom to explore and to understand their own history. You have the capacity to know and name your experience, and certainly you know more about your life than anyone else. You lived it. No author, book, therapist, expert, research psychologist, backlash group, newspaper article, or family member can tell you whether or not you were abused or if your memories are valid. You are the expert on your life, and honor your truth. Remember that doubt is often part of the healing process. Moving into and out of denial is a natural part of the healing process. Periodically, having doubts does not necessarily mean that your memories aren't reliable or that the events in question did not really occur. Even survivors whose memories have been verified by external evidence may have times where they struggle to believe they were really abused. Very few people who truly think that they were sexually abused later find out they weren't. Although it is possible your doubt means it didn't happen, it's more likely that it's just a normal part of the healing process. Look at the times that your doubts come up. If doubts come up after you've read a particularly nasty article, when you've had a visit at your parents', or right after you have intense memories, it's likely that your doubts are related to influences. If they persist even when you're calm and centered in yourself, there may be more reason to think you may have at least part of your story wrong. Yet, even if you find that some of the things you believed are not true, it doesn't mean that all of your memories are unreliable. It's possible to be mistaken about one incident while remembering other events accurately. My brain immediately connects this with structural dissociation or parts, and that relates to my experience. So I have a gaslighter part, which means that the vast majority of the time I can be very comfortable, very confident in what I know about my life related to my sexual traumas, but also related to other things. And then if I get triggered and that gaslighter part gets activated, I can doubt everything. And that having those triggered moments of feeling crazy is not the same thing as having genuine doubt. A lot of times those parts that occasionally get activated have a certain kind of goal, whether it is to protect us from the pain that comes from the reality of our trauma, whether it is to prevent us from acting in ways that might harm our family relationships. A lot of times we have parts that want to keep us aligned with our parents in particular because of how attachment works. And so if your truth would be upsetting to one or both of your parents or your family, people who raised you, etc., then it is very normal to, in my opinion, make sense to have parts that get activated to be like, no, you need to get back in alignment with mom and dad or whoever else. If they want to deny your reality, then part of how that part is going to try to get you back in alignment with them is through gaslighting you and making you doubt yourself. Again, I'm not a therapist, but I definitely personally experienced that. I have seen that in others that I am very close with. My understanding of attachment is that is quite normal. Maybe especially if you spent your childhood having to deny your own pain and deny your own reality for the sake of avoiding the conflict in your family. Know that there is a reason for your pain. If you're experiencing the level of anguish common to survivors of sexual abuse, there is some legitimate reason for that distress. It may not be sexual abuse, but there's something there for you to identify and address. You're not crazy for feeling so much pain. Heal from the things that you are certain of. For example, if you're sure you were emotionally abused, but not certain there was any sexual abuse, focus on healing from the emotional abuse. You'll be making progress in your healing even if you don't have a way to pin down other events that may have taken place. I want to add in here, some people suspect that they had physical SA or CSA, but don't have strong memories of that, but do have strong memories of inappropriate or creepy or just other icky sexualized type behaviors. And so that is non-contact CSA, and you can work towards healing that whether or not you were physically SA'd, and that is a very valid type of sexual trauma in and of itself. My second pinned video shares some examples of non-physical CSA if you want more information on that. It's okay if you're not sure. Although you may feel under pressure to know exactly what happened, it may take time for you to discover the truth. Don't affirm anything that you're not truly ready to affirm. If you're not sure whether you were sexually abused, don't feel pressure to say that you were or that you weren't. You may need time and space to figure out yourself. People who pressure you either way, and this may include your therapist, your incest support group, or the people in your family, are not helping you. Talk instead with people who will hear your questions, will respect your struggle to know, and give you the time to figure it out. Minimize your contact with those who insist it needs to be one way or the other. Assess your own therapeutic relationships. If you are in therapy, talk about your doubts with your therapist. If your therapist is supportive, open to your questioning, and doesn't try to force answers on you, then you can feel confident that you're getting ethical help in exploring your history. If you're in group therapy, you should feel that there's room for you to share your experience as it happened without elaborating on it in any way. I think that's usually true of individual therapy too. You don't usually need to go into details. It's really uncommon for either of my therapists, and I have two, to ask for more details than what I am providing, at least on like exactly what happened. They're way more likely to ask questions about my feelings and how I processed or made sense of things, how it impacts me now, than like the exact details of what happened. And this is true with sexual trauma and other traumas. The exact details of trauma aren't really needed to heal, generally speaking, is my understanding at least. If you never really thought you were abused and your therapist insisted that you were, that's fucking crazy. Or if you thought you had to make up a story and now you don't know if it's true, you're going to need sophisticated and capable help. That is just absolutely wild to me that happens. It's terrible. A consultation or a second opinion can often help clarify a situation. Make sure that you choose someone who doesn't have an investment either in validating your memories or in proving you are misled. Work with someone capable of keeping an open mind until your true history becomes clear. Look for corroboration only if you want it. Even if you never come up with absolute proof to confirm your memories, corroboration of some kind may be available. It basically shares an anecdote of somebody who suspected that their father had physically essayed them, and then they started asking around, and like a bunch of family members saw that he was very open with corn around children and like other things like that. And so even though nobody could say like, yes, he physically did something or no, he didn't, sometimes there's things like that it's like, okay, this isn't proof that this exact thing happened, but it kind of doesn't seem completely unlikely to other people if they've seen some other inappropriate behavior. And that can be validating to a survivor who maybe was thinking, am I completely crazy to think this at all? Often, family members didn't know the abuse was going on or don't want to acknowledge it now. But if you look clearly at your history, you may find information that helps you figure out what could have taken place. Re-examining family photo albums, old diaries, or family stories may give you clues about your past. Sometimes talking to people who were there, family members, old friends, teachers, school counselors, or neighbors can yield valuable insights. School and medical records may also contain some revealing information. This kind of information gathering, however, can involve risks. You may not find anything concrete to help you, and emotionally, the experience of going back to your childhood home and talking to people who you knew as a child could shake your roots. It's essential that you undertake such an investigation only if you're ready, and only if you truly want to, not because you feel pressured into coming up with proof. Such a search is definitely not a required part of the healing process. Unless you are suing your abuser, you need only corroboration to satisfy yourself, not the standard of evidence required to convict someone in a court of law. If your family keeps bringing up the topic of false memories, or I would say just like not believing you in general, it's okay to set limits. If your family sends you articles about gullible women being brainwashed by therapists or tries to engage you in debates about the validity of your memories, it's okay to protect yourself. If you don't want to read the articles, you can throw them away. If you don't want to talk about your memories, you can change the topic or end the conversation. You have options. Learning to exercise them is an important part of healing. Even if you are not sure what happened to you, you can still limit or discontinue contact with family if you need to. Though it may be difficult for you and for them, you're not victimizing someone by setting limits or even separating from them. Do what's best for you. Take as much time as you need. This is a little randomly spicy of me, but it's funny to me when I read books from like the 90s or just not the last 10 years that talk about cutting people off like that because of like this story now that estrangement is a trend. Hold off on confronting your abuser or disclosing the abuse to family members who are likely to be upset. It says if you've already told a family member or confronted someone and now you're not sure, there's no shame in being honest. Depending on what's best for you, you can tell those involved that you're no longer sure, or you can wait until you feel more certain to talk to them. In the meantime, it's your choice whether you can continue to have contact. Remember that the whole survivors movement does not rest on your shoulders. If, upon further exploration, you become clear that you are not sexually abused, it's okay for you to claim that truth. You are not letting anyone down because you don't share a particular trauma. The whole survivors movement does not rest on you. And your experience does not invalidate the experience of survivors. Just because you were mistaken doesn't mean that they are. There's room for you and for them to have had different experiences. Respect their courage and integrity and expect them to respect yours. Remember that you can trust yourself. Above all else, trust your own sense of who you are and what your experiences have been. If the healing process is about anything, it's about learning to trust yourself, your feelings, and your reality. You are the best judge of what happened to you. Continue to value your own knowing, even if that changes as you discover more. And that is it for the false memory syndrome section and for this whole book for me. As I said, I'll be moving on to this book next, and I actually already have more sexual healing and CSA related books to cover in the future. So follow me if you're on this sexual healing journey as well.